gentleman will be Representative Lamborn for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for having this hearing. Thank you to the witness for being here. As a Coloradan, I'm really concerned about something that has just happened with BLM. Last month, BLM issued 2 supplemental environmental impact statements for 2 resource management plans that would withdraw 1.6 million acres of federal land in Colorado from energy production. The protection of the sage grouse is the supposed rationale behind this drastic action, but this species has experienced a 24% increase in the Colorado population since 2019, just in the last 4 years. And with other species, listen to this. Colorado's elk herd is the largest in the nation, has increased from 40,000 in the early 1900s to 300,000 today. Mule deer has gone from 40,000, has increased by 40,000 since just 2018, 5 years ago. And our population of antelope has gone from 5,000 in the 40s to 85,000 today. And I bring up these different species in addition to the sage grouse because all of this has been done with oil and gas production nearby. There's no dichotomy. You can have both. Colorado is the 4th largest producer of oil in the country, and yet still finds a way to responsibly ensure a robust and healthy ecosystem. So, Mr. Ned, why does the BLM feel it is appropriate to hurt Americans and my own state of Colorado with this withdrawal when we're seeing positive benefits in wildlife in every sector?
Yeah, Congressman, I don't believe the Bureau of Land Management intent is to hurt members or hurt the community. The intent is to look at the resources and find a way to create, as we transition to the clean energy economy, to develop these resources. And so looking at the Colorado plan is to update the analysis and ensure that we're thoughtful in where and how we develop.
I understand that this administration has an anti-fossil fuel agenda, but this decision seems to me to be based on an excuse. The rationale is sage grouse are being hurt and we have to protect the sage grouse. And that's just a fig leaf. That's just a poor excuse to make this action because the population has been going up for sage grouse and these other species are thriving as well. So looking back to 2015, Mr. Ned, what changes have taken place when the original resources management plans were initiated compared to today? Other than that, we have a new White House with a new agenda against fossil fuels. What has changed on the ground?
Clearly, it's my understanding that we have been able to collect data from many sources that shows the analysis that was done then is not as current as it can be to address the impacts today. And those impacts, I cannot speak specifically to what's going on in that district office, but I'm quite sure our state director there or our field would be able to provide some more specifics.
With oil and gas production, there's a significant amount of money that goes into local communities. Besides the immediate jobs and salaries, there's oil and gas royalties that fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, local education programs, roads, and much more. So what analysis did BLM do, not on the species that supposedly is going to be negatively impacted, which I think is just an excuse and is not valid, but what analysis was done on the effect on communities of people? Because the people are going to have revenue shortfalls that will hurt the Land and Water Conservation Fund and jobs and other things like that. What analysis was done on how the people will be affected?
As land use plans or EISs, whichever, any analysis, we take into account the full impact, and I cannot speak specifically to those 2 plans, what the analysis, but I'm quite sure it was part of the analysis, and we'll be glad to provide additional information. And again, those plans are out as draft, so we're taking comments and getting input.
Well, could you please supply that to the committee? I'd make that request because I see a negative here with a dubious positive over here, and it just seems like there's an agenda that's driving this that's not being admitted to, that's not being honestly admitted to. Mr. Ned, you say in your testimony that the BLM plans to, quote, avoid leasing in areas with sensitive cultural, wildlife, and recreation resources, end quote. This is so open-ended, you could drive any agenda through it. Does this mean that you will not be leasing in areas that have the presence of any endangered species, even if that species happens to be doing better than it was earlier, like the sage-grouse?
Yeah, we have a requirement by law to put certain terms and conditions in place for endangered species. And so what the agency is looking at a swath of land or a parcel is how best to develop, looking for the areas that is most likely, probably can be developed, lower conflict, and ensuring, again, that we're protecting what the law tells us to. And under the Endangered Species Act, we have that requirement.
Well, how does that differ from what was the status quo ante? In other words, before the Biden administration came into office, this wasn't the issue that it is now. What has changed, and what will change with this language that you're saying, avoiding leasing in areas with sensitive cultural, wildlife, and recreation resources, which probably is any place in the country would have all or some of those resources? What's BLM going to do differently now?
I think the Bureau, as it learns, as it gathers data, which in 2015 to now it gathers more data, it's looking to see what is the impact. And clearly, Congressman, from where you sit, you've articulated how the species are doing much better. We're hoping, and through our analysis, we will look to see what are those impacts and then put condition in place to ensure we're falling, again, if it's an endangered species, the Endangered Species Act, in protecting those species.
Okay, well, thank you for your answers. I'm still not satisfied with what the BLM is doing. I would love to see them reverse this 1.6 million acre withdrawal of federal land in Colorado from energy production. And that should be what actually takes place. Thank you for being here, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.